Hello, everyone. Today I have a guest from Bulgaria, and I want to thank Dr. Piotr Pietrzak for his time, and he was very kind and he accepted my invitation, and he is the guest of my video today. Yes.
Very much. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, thanks a lot for your time. I know that you have been busy with academic publications, and so thanks a lot for your time. First of all, before my questions, I want to introduce you to the audience.
Okay.
And of course, you can introduce more if you want about your profile. Piotr Pietrzak holds a Ph.D. and he specializes in the Middle East and the Islamic world region. His recent work relates to the theory of international relations, conflict resolution strategies, and humanitarianism. Pietrzak believes that realist and liberal schools of international relations account for a good point of theoretical departure, and he considers himself a structural institutionalist who pays special attention to the role and the stratification of international institutions in the global architecture of power. In his recent publications, he went to an extreme to bring to light a socio-historical context of increasing the sectarian conflict in Syria in order to demonstrate how the historical relations and abstract world of ideas have impacted the development of the situation in this country for the last 12 years. So shortly, this is not short, of course. This has a great deal of information about you, but also you have like publications, and there's a very new concept that I have heard in recent days, ontology in state nascendi, and I'm going to try to ask some questions about this. Thank you again, and I'm going to ask the first question. I read one of your publications, and it covers the idea of humanitarian intervention. In one of the chapters, you suggest an issue with the way the current international relations theory is being approached. You came up with the new compartmentalization of various IR-related ideas and approaches, paradigms, and also schools of thought. You called this concept as an ontology in status nascendi. Could you please explain this concept to us? Thank you again.
Of course. Dr. Burak, thank you very much for your kind invitation, and thank you much for taking your time to introduce to broader public my concept. So basically, from my perspective, studying Middle East, studying IR theory, and studying social science in general is like climbing a Mount Everest. So you need to be well prepared to reach the peak, and it takes time, lots of time to acquaint yourself with the current theories, approaches, paradigms, ontologies, and various traditions. And the whole IR theory, which we use to sometimes describe what's going on in the world, is very complex, but it's also quite eclectic. So sometimes one may say that's a little bit chaotic. So my idea of ontology in status nascendi is just to bring to the table all of the most relevant approaches and just start to discuss the most important matters there are. And the contemporary world of politics and international relations is a little bit hectic these days, because the matters in the Middle East are actually stabilizing. When you compare Middle East with Eastern Europe now, I don't know which one is more destabilized, because the current war in Ukraine is quite tragic, let's say. The developments from February 2022 surprised many IR scholars. And also, if you bring to equation regions like Balkans, for instance, 20 years ago, we assumed that Balkans are so internally destabilized that we will always use this concept of Balkanization. But as a matter of fact, the concept of Balkanization is no longer relevant, because Balkans are one of the most stable regions in Europe nowadays. The same with the concept of Finlandization. The Finlandization concept no longer applies to describe for instance, Finnish foreign policy. So I came up with this concept, ontology in status understanding, when I was studying in Syria and Arab Springs in the region, because very interesting fact about Syrian conflict and Syrian uprising is the fact that it has changed and it has evolved just like chameleon. It changed its skin coloration various of times. It started like as a uprising, then it went to radicalized conflicts between various jihadist forces in the region. Then global powers intervened, first US to basically to fight ISIS, then Russia to back up Bashar al-Assad, then Turkey a little bit intervened in Syria, of course Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, name any country, Iran, any country which is interested in pursuing their political objectives and goals, they are present in Syria. Even Chinese policymakers are interested in what's going on in the region. Not to mention the fact that Syrian conflict is just neighboring Iraq, and the political situation in Iraq has never been stable. So that's where the idea of bringing a lot of approaches together comes very nicely to hand, because you need to be aware of various approaches in order to understand what's going on. And
also, yes, sorry to interrupt. Could you, I forgot to mention the name of the book. Maybe also, could you please tell the content of the book, where this concept emerged? What is the name of the book? Yes.
Okay, so I have it here just to show to our audience. It's on the idea of humanitarian intervention and new compartmentalization of IR theories. So basically, there's a couple of chapters. Some of them are brief and they bring to the broader public some common concepts. Others are more specific. They deliberate on the idea of humanitarian intervention, on idea of non-humanitarian intervention. Then I bring to the table various IR theories, and then I bring to everyone's attention the concept of ontology in status understanding, which connects somehow the theory and practice, because the difficulty here with the conflicts and conflict management is the fact that since they are changing so rapidly, sometimes it's difficult to find the relevant methodology or relevant ontology to describe them. So when I started studying Syrian conflict, it was a confrontation between rebels and the regime. When I basically 5 years into the conflict, the local actors have changed, or they've changed the political organizations that they belonged, or the global actors involved changed. So change is basically the new wave in the conflict management, conflict resolution strategies. We need to embrace it, and we need to have tools in order to describe this change in the most approachable manner. And I suppose that could be useful publication for young adepts of IR theory, for someone who is interested in humanitarianism, and for philosophers as well, because I try to bring contemporary philosophy, continental philosophy to the IR debates because it's very useful.
Not only conflicts, but also philosophical debates. What other concepts and areas did you use this concept?
For instance, I recently applied ontology in status understanding to investigate various literature concepts. I was asked by one of my colleagues from Kosovo who suggested that it would be a good idea to actually try it with different linguistic approaches, and we've tried it, and she was very happy with the outcome. So it can be used in political science, it can be used in philosophy. There is a lot in common with Habermasian lives work. Jürgen Habermas was very particular about connecting various horizons of investigations. It can be said that also Derrida,
Jacques Derrida.
Jacques Derrida, he is strong in deconstruction, and not only deconstruction, because deconstruction is one of his concepts, but grammatology. He's very strong on the language as well, and also reanimating of the concepts. And from my perspective, the idea of humanitarian intervention has to be reanimated, because the international community has certain responsibilities towards people who are affected by conflict, towards the civilians who are affected by conflict. But after the Yugoslavian conflicts, when NATO intervened in Kosovo, basically on behalf of Kosovar people against Serbia, this conflict has been a little bit labeled as pro-American or pro-Western. But there is many examples of foreign countries intervening in their neighbors or in different countries on actual humanitarian grounds, and not just to pursue their political objectives or get local resources and humanitarian intervention as a concept is a label as well, and sometimes the evil people try to use it to present themselves in the good manner. And that's why the philosophy comes very handy, because philosophy is very particular on clarity, transparency, accountability, and truth.
Yes.
One of my basic arguments in this book relates to the pursuit of truth, because very often a lot of IR theorists try to exceed expectations when it comes to this description of the social reality at hand, but they don't question themselves sometimes, and they miss the truth, the accountability of the current situation. And as long as their approaches seem very appealing, but sometimes they miss the point.
Yes.
And
Go
on.
Please go. Yes, actually, this concept is really insightful, and I want to thank you very much for coining this concept and for letting us approach to the different conflicts by using this concept. So ontology and status nascendi. So I know that ontology is a concept related with philosophy, like epistemology, ontology, they are different, of course. But when you say status and nascendi is a new word, like Latin maybe. Sure. Could you also give the definitions or the meaning when I hear the concept ontology, status nascendi, because it's very new for me? What can I understand? So yes, humanitarian interventionism and other philosophical traditions, but basically, how can we define this concept?
Of course. So in status nascendi, Latin, from Latin, it translates to in the process of creation or in the process of becoming. And my basic understanding of the difficulty here is that even if we come up with very good compartmentalization, it has to be always flexible. It has to be adjustable to the circumstances. Because in my book, I've described a number of limitations of IR theory, but I also described a lot of things which are positive about IR theory. So it's always an interplay between good and bad things in any social situation, basically. So in status nascendi is not only a concept, it's a promise. It's a promise that whatever happens, and in whatever circumstances we use this concept, we would always have to be respectful, and we would have to be mindful of other people. It's not only about us, about our individual perceptions, but it's about everyone around us. And diversity is actually the biggest positive of this concept, because by bringing everyone to the same table, by default, we create the debate which is unpredictable, and this debate is in status nascendi. So we cannot control it. We cannot even direct it. And again, I'm getting a little bit more philosophical here, but that's what is missing in the current political foreign policy analysis. Everyone wants to have answers straight away. And when it comes to the difficulty, when it comes to the global crisis, yeah, the time is of the essence. But sometimes
changes.
Before you come up with the solution, you need to find a way and evaluate this solution. You need to answer difficult questions. And I consider myself an ontologist. And the basic, my basic responsibility as an ontologist is to ask difficult questions, even the questions which I don't have answers to. But if I don't have an answer, if I don't know the answer, I should know the person who could guide me there, or I should know whom to ask. So basically, that's a respectful part of this process. Like, for instance, let's bring the George W. Bush to equation and his Iraq intervention in 2003. He described it as a humanitarian intervention, but it was never humanitarian intervention. It was all about oil in Iraq. And removing Saddam Hussein from power in Iraq was quite an event, and perhaps many people in Iraq are happy about it, but the mess which was created afterwards, we need to deal with that until this very day. So the problem there was the fact that they did not ask themselves relevant questions, as a matter of fact, because they didn't answer the question, oh, what's gonna happen when we leave?
Next.
These questions were not asked in the Afghani situation when the Soviets left in 1988. Americans, of course, supported the local mujahideens back then. But the moment Soviets left Afghanistan, Afghan people were left on their own, and they were dealing with their problems on their own. Again, it's a little bit that's the issue why that's the reason why we need to elaborate various sophisticated IR-related concepts to deal with the sophisticated matters at hand, because we complicated this word, and someone has to explain it, basically.
Yes, I definitely agree with you. So this concept is quite useful because it gives us, I think it gives the analysts or the researchers some degree of flexibility, right? So we should move beyond the problems, we should move beyond the answers and the questions, what lies next. So yes, having this maybe foresight is really important, because maybe you can also, like, we have some like 10 minutes or so, maybe if we are to talk about the pandemic, the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic. So this was also very sudden, unexpected, so it affected the whole world. So could we also use such concepts? For example, some countries sent medical aids, medical support to other underdeveloped countries. They sent vaccines and other stuff. So could you use this concept?
Of course. Basically, when it comes to humanitarian intervention, as a matter of fact, humanitarian intervention in Staten Sandy, there are some humanitarian interventions which are human-made, like wars, like conflicts, like disagreements between people. But there are natural emergencies like tsunamis, pandemics, floods, I don't know, massive fires. And we need to deal with the new circumstances because of the global warming and the changing attitudes of the global powers to global warming. We are leaving the old concept of using coal and oil and petrol to fuel our cars, to heat our houses. We go into green energy, and it's all about concepts and structures and superstructures. So ontology, which is transforming, which is transformative, respectful, and tries to understand or tries to go into the bottom of things, will help us to understand the challenges we face as a humanity. Because we cannot rely on the old concepts, old dogmas and paradigms which we are used to, only because it's more convenient. No, we need to expose ourselves to something more well, challenging, difficult, but by doing so, we are getting stronger.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Also, maybe just for like final comments, maybe I also saw your conversation about crisis management strategies on YouTube in a very distinguished YouTube channel. So, what are your views and opinions about crisis management strategies? Are the leaders in Europe, are the political leaders successful at that in these terms?
Well, that's the thing. When it comes to European leaders, after Angela Merkel retired from German politics, I think we experience a crisis of European leadership because there's no one who can replace her. Even the new Chancellor of Germany, Mr. Schulz, he seems to have problems with evaluating the situation. Mr. Macron of France is barely a leader whom we can trust. And when it comes to the direction of the European Union and the way we deal with the crisis, we show lack of unity. And when it comes to dealing with such difficult crises like the war in Ukraine, we should come with a single policy which could basically surprise Putin. As a matter of fact, we are nowhere there. And for the last 7 months of the conflict, European Union shown a lot of things which, well, basically suggest that it's a union of 27 members who have different political interests and objectives and national interests, which they want to preserve at all costs. There is no leader of European Union who suggests, oh, we will use this conflict resolution mechanism to deal with this crisis. And I want everyone on board. Everyone comes up with different solutions, different ideas. For instance, when Boris Johnson was still a prime minister, he suggested, oh, how about if Ukraine starts attacking Russian territories? And that's how they will surprise Putin, and that's how they will gain leverage in this conflict. But well, Ukraine now tried it. They attacked Crimea Bridge, the one which Putin was very proud of, and Russia just retaliated at the very expense of the civilian population in Ukraine. So the person who is into conflict management would ask first, how can we resolve this conflict without trying to persuade both parties to go to extreme? Because no conflict can be won by conventional weapons when one of the parties happens to have quite a big nuclear arsenal.
Yes.
So
thank you. Yeah.
One thing which we need to ask ourselves is, how can we support Ukraine in this conflict with Russia more?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much. So thank you. So again, I want to thank you very much. Your concept ontology in state ascendi, also as you told me in your email, hopes to enhance the disciplines internal coherence and interdepartmental understanding within the IR theory, and it will improve the way we use existing paradigms, methodological standards, and tools that we use to describe the social reality, you say. So you also talk about, define, and explain this concept in a detailed way in your book called On the Idea of Humanitarian Interventionism. And I'm also going to put the links of your book, your LinkedIn profile and academia profile underneath the video. I want to thank you very much, Dr. Piotr, for giving me your time this afternoon. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.